Everybody, welcome to this Wednesday's Wonder Why Lunch and Learn. So awesome to have you with us. I am Tracy Sider, pain relief and body shape movement coach for women over 40 who are done with their stiff, achy, stuck behind screens body and are ready to get in shape and feel pain-free without the sweat, pain, or time suck of typical exercise. And I help you do this in my Reshape Method program. But today we are here talking about all things sleep. And I am so excited to welcome on, let me bring her on, Annika Carroll. Annika, it's so wonderful to have you with us. Let me just make sure that we are both on the screen here. Okay, amazing. So Annika is going to be speaking to us today about how your gut could be causing sleep issues. Fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Annika is a sleep and health coach for women, and she is CEO of, I love it, the name of your company, Sleep Like a Boss. Yeah. So Annika, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us how gut and sleep are connected.
I would love to, Tracy. I'm Annika Carroll. I have a background, funnily, in international business. I used to work in human resources in the corporate world, burnt myself out pretty badly. Not just work related, there was other reasons too. And while I was burnt out, I had this problem that I wasn't sleeping. I was so tired and exhausted and I couldn't sleep and I didn't understand it. And I went from doctor to therapist to naturopath to everybody, and everybody helped me a little, but it wasn't, my sleep was still an issue. And then we moved from Germany to Canada because my husband's from here and we've been living in Germany for 10 years. And that whole move kind of threw me off again. I had another burnout and again, the sleep problems came. And then I worked with somebody who holistically looked at what was going on in my body, not just you're stressed, but what is actually internally causing you physical stress that you might not be seeing. And for me, those were gut issues, hormonal issues, nutrient deficiencies, all kinds of things. And once I fixed all that, my sleep was back. And then I was like, this is not just me that's struggling with this. There's so many people out there, women more than men. And that's how I became a women's sleep and health coach.
And so how come it's women more than men?
I think it is, why that is I think we do take on a lot, like multiple heads, right? Like we manage a lot. And we are a little bit of different cyclic beings than men. While we all have a circadian rhythm, so our sleep-wake cycle, that is kind of all the same for each and every one of us, men have, from a hormonal perspective, they have testosterone, which basically cycles in a 24-hour cycle. Then women have a menstrual cycle that is like roughly a 28-day cycle, right? So estrogen, progesterone being part of this whole equation too. And I think that just makes us a little more complex also. Mm-hmm. And sometimes also because of that, maybe a little more vulnerable to even mental health things if these hormones get out of balance. And there is we can do a whole other session on why those could get out of balance. But that is, I think, why we often struggle with sleep more. And gut issues are, I would say, definitely a male and a female problem, but we can dive into why females are also a bit more affected potentially at a certain part in their life.
Let's do that. And if you're watching on Facebook or LinkedIn, YouTube, comments off, let us know, give us some hearts, give us some likes, and let us know in the comments if you are struggling with sleep and how long you've been struggling with sleep for. And maybe people can also let us know, because Annika's going to go back and check the comments on LinkedIn and YouTube. So, on LinkedIn and Facebook. So if you've got any questions for her, please leave them in the comments and Annika will come and look. But let us know how long you've been struggling with your sleep issues for. And we'd also love to know the various things that you've tried to help. Any other questions or comments you would like people to leave before we move on?
No, I think that'd be really interesting. And really, what have you tried and what hasn't worked? That also really always gives good insight on how far you've already gone in your journey.
Right. Amazing. Great. Okay. So tell us, what is this link between gut and sleep?
Yeah. So maybe really quickly, how does sleep work? We have a circadian rhythm. So that is our sleep-wake cycle. That means we're supposed to be awake during the day and asleep at night. And there's two hormones that govern this process. One is cortisol and one is melatonin. And cortisol is often referred to as our stress hormone, but it is basically our awake hormone that gives us energy throughout the day. That is supposed to decline towards the later afternoon, evening. Then melatonin is supposed to come in. And a lot of people have heard of melatonin because they might have supplemented it. It's another hormone that is supposed to help us fall asleep. If this system gets out of balance, sleep is going to suffer and our overall health is going to suffer. And so how is this linked to gut health? There are a lot of things that can be happening in your gut that will actually raise your cortisol. And they can raise your cortisol at a moment where you don't want it, and that's at night. And then it can really mess with your sleep. So what are things in the gut that could raise cortisol? One is for sure parasites. People are always like, disgusting, and I don't have them. Caution. Like, I see so many ladies who have parasites from travel, from contaminated waters, from swimming in lakes and accidentally drinking lake water. We all do that in the summer, specifically in Canada, right? There's just so many sources that we could be exposed to them. So they are nocturnal, so they're active at night. So if that's something, people who have constant night wakings, where it's worse around the full moon, that could be an indicator for that. Another thing that could raise cortisol at night is from the gut perspective, is if you have a leaky gut. What is a leaky gut? We have this membrane in our gut that's supposed to help just certain amounts of nutrients and things go into the body, and the rest is supposed to kind of just run through our system. If these junctions in that gut membrane open for multiple reasons, food particles and all kinds of other things can get into the system, and the body's like, oh my God, something just came in that is not supposed to be here. Attack. Raises cortisol, causes issues, we can't sleep. Another thing that is very important, I think the more we age, the weaker our digestive capacity can get. So what happens a lot is our stomach acid goes down. Because we're often super stressed and we eat on the go and we're just very hectic and busy. That suppresses stomach acid release, but age does it. And if you've been on proton pump inhibitors, a lot of people have been put on those. All those things lower stomach acid, and stomach acid helps neutralize anything bad that comes in. And if our stomach acid is too low, that can then have pathogens come in that don't get neutralized and pass on into the gut. Then we get what we call a dysbiosis, like an imbalance of good and bad gut bacteria. And good gut bacteria are there to help us make something that's called a neurotransmitter. Those are little chemical messengers that make, among other things, calming substances. If those are not there in good amounts, in sufficient amounts, these good gut bacteria, we might not have enough neurotransmitters. Or if we don't eat enough protein, or we can't break the protein down well because we don't have good digestive capacity, because we're older now and we're stressed, then we can't make enough neurotransmitters. So we might struggle with sleep because our system is always revved up because we don't have enough calming neurotransmitters. And so there's lots of things going on. Another thing that is very interesting for women, especially perimenopausal, menopausal age, while we so often kind of negatively talk about estrogen, we're like, because then before we go into menopause, we might get this phase of estrogen dominance where we all almost feel it's like it's too much and we're just really suffering from that. It's too much. Estrogen actually helps keeping bad gut bacteria in check. And once we get into perimenopause, so the phase before menopause, and then into menopause and our estrogen declines, we're kind of opening the gates for bad gut bacteria to take overgrowth. And if we then have low stomach acid and low estrogen, it's kind of this cascade coming from the gut from the stomach into the gut. And then there's just this there is a bacteria, it's called LPS, lipopolysaccharides, and that really causes leaky gut, and that is something that estrogen can really keep in check. But if estrogen's gone or low, that can really take over. And then we have this leaky gut. And on top of that, we have, when we get into menopause, a drop in gut diversity. Like our gut bacteria are just less diverse. And then we have this neurotransmitter problem again, because they can't make the calming agents that we want them to make. So it's kind of like this big thing. And then
it's like a perfect storm.
It's the perfect storm. And then these LPS that are being kept in check with estrogen normally, yeah, they cause inflammation. And you know what's one of the body's top anti-inflammatory agents to go to help suppress inflammation or keep it in check? Cortisol. And that is the perfect storm, because then we have this constant low-grade inflammation that just keeps our cortisol at a level that we don't want constantly. And then melatonin just doesn't really have a chance to take over and help us really get to sleep and get a good night's sleep.
Right. And then people are trying all these different like sleep hygiene things, right? We think we're doing all the stuff because there's nothing, like your life is like essentially just awful if you can't get a good night's sleep. You know, I mean, I'm working with the body and we're trying to build muscle and get the body to work well. And you know, your muscle building and your weight loss happens when you're sleeping.
Yes.
The magic happens when you sleep, right? Yes. So if you can't get the good sleep, then all these other things that you were doing, you're just not getting the benefits, and then you're getting frustrated, and then it's like you're the problem, and it just becomes this whole spiral, right? So I love that when we were talking, you were telling me about these issues in the gut that are really, really overlooked, because when it comes to sleep, we're like, okay, you know, your windows must be closed and you must listen to this and the blue light and blah, 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 blah. So tell us more about, like, how can we tell if that 3 a.m. waking is a gut issue or if it's something else?
Yeah, well, if you're somebody who like regularly wakes up at 3 a.m., there are multiple things it can be, but gut for sure is one of them. So if it's something that happens more around the full moon, that you're seeing that happening, I would start looking into something like parasites.
If and you're somebody, in terms of that, what kind of testing would you look at?
Stool testing. You would do a stool testing, and technically even your doctor can do it. I don't know if they would, if they think it's urgent enough. If you go and say, I'm awake around the full moon, can we take a stool test? And a naturopathic doctor or a functional practitioner can both do it. Yeah, if you are somebody who has maybe digestive issues otherwise, and that could be all kinds of things. That could be gas, that could be bloating. You're the type of lady who needs a different, like I used to be like that. Before I ate, I could wear a certain type of pant, and after my meal, I was different size, because it was just like that's not right? That like bloating like that. If you're somebody who suffers from belching, burping after eating, acid reflux, those kinds of things, because some of these are linked to gut issues. Some of those can be linked to low melatonin levels in the body. So that would affect your sleep for sure, because melatonin is also made in the gut. So those are things to really look out for. Are there any digestive issues linked to that waking up? Sometimes we have people who have no symptoms at all, and they still have issues, but those were like the big ones: gas, bloating, belching, burping, undigested food and stool. Are you constipated? Do you have diarrhea? Do you swing from constipation to diarrhea? A lot, right? Those are all indicators that there's really something wrong in the gut. And if you're up at 3 a.m. a lot, then I would start looking into that.
And so you said, I just want to go back to the parasite thing, okay? You said that, because like growing up in South Africa with our dogs, outdoors and everything, like we've been in Canada for 14 years and we haven't done this yet. But like every 6 months in South Africa, we would do like a family and animal like deworming. Is that something you kind of recommend, number one? And number two, like what percentage of the women you see have a parasite issue? Like what numbers are we looking at? How common is it really?
I would say from the percentage of women that I see, 50 to 60%.
Oh, that's a fair amount.
Yeah, that's every other person.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would say probably more than 60%. Yeah. And would I recommend a yearly or biannual? That really depends. You know what? It probably isn't a bad idea, but you have to kind of know what you're doing because it
Right,
can affect your gut microbiome. If you're
right.
actually trying to kill off things, you need to rebuild your gut microbiome after. If we're just, and I'm not taking this down, like degrading this, but if you're deworming
Mhm.
or doing a complete parasite cleanse, that is a bit of a different
Right,
kind of an herbal treatment that you would do
right.
so that that parasite cleanse can be pretty
Mhm.
extensive, and with that you really need to rebuild your gut. But I totally agree that that's what we do with dogs,
And I think
right? We
especially if
deworm
we
them
have
all the
pets
time.
in our home, right? Our dogs and our cats, they're
Yes.
like, we probably
Yeah.
all need to be treated together, right?
Ideally, well, and normally dogs are treated quite frequently, right? I think people who have dogs, they get dewormed on a regular basis, but as humans we don't do that. And yes, can we take on stuff? Yes, but like worms or things I rarely see on stool tests with people. I see other
What
things.
kind of
Like
bacteria are you seeing on people?
I see like things like blastocystis hominis, I see things like giardia. Those are like the things, and those are often used to come from travel to like foreign countries, and you would drink contaminated water. Blasto can also come from uncooked meats or not properly cooked meats, those kinds of things, but we see them more and more. So I think either people have brought them into the countries more from the travel and they're just spreading, or they've kind of, yeah, that's probably how it happened because it used to be a lot less. So those are the classic ones. What I also see a lot is, but that's a bacteria, that's an H. pylori, Helicobacter pylori, that about 50 to 70% of the world's population have at some point in their life. For a lot of people, it doesn't even cause symptoms. But what it does, if you have it, it lowers your stomach acid.
Mm-hmm.
And that lowers your digestive capacity
Right.
and it lowers your first line of defense. So you're just way more vulnerable to other things coming in, like
Yes.
parasites that can then.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you mentioned the stomach acid. I was actually having a conversation with my husband about this the other night. Is that a lot of people think that, if they have issues with their gut or if they have issues with reflux, it's because their stomach acid's too high and they need to go and take an antacid. And I'm like, no, no, no,
No,
no, no.
it's in most cases it's the opposite. And please, and I was like that when I had my burnout. I had a stomach issue, and they checked everything. They shoved like cameras down my throat. Didn't find anything. What did they do? They put me on a proton pump inhibitor because I was having this acid reflux. Within 2 weeks, I felt literally stupid. Like my brain was not working. It depletes like so many minerals and nutrients and vitamins in the body. And I went off of it. I was like, I can't function. But people take these long term, and they're actually really depleting. And if you have acid reflux, it's likely that you have low stomach acid, and your body's mechanisms of closing that sphincter that's by your stomach from your esophagus to your stomach, that signaling isn't working right. But you can't just, and you could go and buy some betaine HCl, like stomach acid, at the health food store. It's just if you have H. pylori, you're going to be massively feeding H. pylori with stomach acid.
Right.
So you kind of want to maybe check if that's a whole issue for you. I would potentially check that. But also, if you are struggling with low stomach acid and you have acid reflux, slow down. Like just really like look at how you're eating, when you're eating. Are you in a what we call a parasympathetic state? Like, are you relaxed? Are you eating standing up somewhere? Are you actually sitting at a table? Are you taking 5 deep breaths to get the system down, to get the system into a digest ready mode? Because then it will start to release stomach acid and will start helping you with that. But if we're constantly stressed and in fight or flight and we're like running away from a saber-toothed tiger, right? That's basically, we're always like, there is no saber-toothed tiger, but your body is stressed. If you eat on the go, if you're constantly somebody who's going and in action, your body's like, this is a stressful threat here. I don't think about I need to digest right now, I need to survive. So am I secreting stomach acid to aid digestion while I'm fleeing a threat? No way. I'm going to use all my energy in my muscles to run. And so if we don't have a healthy like eating routine where we really slow down, are present, chew well, because there is no teeth in our stomachs, right? Like if we don't make this stuff really liquid before we swallow it, all that just takes extra energy from the body. And if there's not enough stomach acid, then it's all going to come back. So really creating that setting of slow and easy to digest with stomach acid. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. So are there are there any other signs and symptoms? I know we touched on some of the signs and symptoms. Maybe if you can just list them again, just so that people, and let us know if you're like brave in the Facebook group, if you're watching in my Moving and Reshaping Club for Women Over 40 Facebook group. That's private, so let us know there. Like which of these symptoms you think are you. So maybe if you can just list them again.
Yeah, I think there's the things like gas and bloating are huge. Acid reflux is a big one. Undigested food in your stool. Do you have floating stools? Because then we have a fat absorption issue. Do you have constipation? Do you have diarrhea? Do you like go from constipation to diarrhea and it alternates? Even things like brain fog, joint pain, mood issues, skin issues can all be linked to gut. Yes, in perimenopause, menopause, we then have to dig a little deeper because they could also, some of them could be hormonal, right? If estrogen and progesterone are lower, this could be some of it, but for sure, those things also can come from the gut. So those are things I would start to look out for to see if there is something, there might be a correlation there.
Yeah. And what are some ways to start addressing this? What is your recommendation for people to start addressing their gut health?
Well, there's multiple things you can do. The one is, for sure, if you want to work with a practitioner who can test, so we actually know what's going on and then give you a protocol to heal the gut. That is one thing. The other thing, if you are somebody who said, you know what, I kind of want to try this by myself, first, really start to slow down and start listening to your body and maybe track for yourself a little bit of what am I eating?
Track the full moon.
Track the full moon for sure, but also track what you're eating. There are certain foods that we know cause so much issue in the gut for most people, gluten being one of them, dairy being another, sugar and alcohol. And then and if you're then somebody who's maybe constipated and this stuff sits in your gut and it starts putrefying and fermenting and whatnot, and then we get the gas and the blah. So maybe watch a little what you're eating. I would also for a while, and I would start maybe, because I know it's hard for people, start with 2 weeks and maybe go to 4 weeks if you see that you're feeling better. Cut those out. Cut out the gluten, the dairy, the alcohol, and the sugar, and see how you're feeling, how your digestion is, how your
cut
mood
them
is,
out all at the same time or one at a time so that you can see what's...
So you cut them, I would cut them all out, but then when you put them back in, you put in one at a time. Okay. And you can even play around, because dairy is a big field, right? So some people do okay on like a yogurt or a kefir or something, but they don't do well on cheese, or they don't do well on milk, but they do well on like a goat's cheese or a sheep cheese or something like that, right? So those are things we can play around with. So that is definitely something. Look at the foods and look at foods that you already know are not good for you. Like you're like, oh, I know when I eat this, I'm going to get like mucus, or I'm going to get this postnasal drip, or it's itchy. I love this food, but I know it's not good for me. Leave it out for a while. Give the body a chance to heal, because if we keep throwing that in, we're kind of putting oil on the fire. The gut heals itself within about a week. Like it sheds lining every 2 to 7 days. It kind of does itself. But if we keep pouring the stuff in that hurts it, we kind of always hurt it again while it's trying to heal.
Okay, that's huge. That's huge, right? Because I'm working with the body and fascia is like a year-long process. But
the gut's quick.
That it's like within a week, you can already start to feel a difference. Yeah, that's
and you know what? From working with clients, I think the biggest one, especially if you're somebody who has diarrhea or constipation, the biggest one is dairy for so many people. Mm-hmm. Take it out and see what happens. The other thing really
is that because like milk's meant for baby cows?
Well, there's lots of discussions, right? There's this discussion of, is the human designed to eat other mammals' milk, or is that just for babies? We know that a lot of the population is to a degree lactose intolerant, that we just don't have enough of that enzyme to break down lactose properly. That's why a lot of us can do better on other things than pasteurized milk, but like a grass-fed yogurt or like a sheep's or goat cheese or something, because the lactose content there is a bit different. Dairy is inflammatory. So depending on how healthy your overall system is, your body can just deal with it better. But most of us are not super healthy in the gut sometimes without knowing. And then we just stress the body more and more with it. And then when we heal the body, a lot of people can put dairy back in. Maybe not all of it. Some of it might be like the milk is going, or some of the cheeses are not coming back, or something like that. And it's also often quantities. Like, do we really need to chug like a big glass of milk? Our body probably doesn't have capacity to, in one setting, to actually digest that. But if we do small amounts here and there, maybe we can actually deal with that a lot better.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating. Thank you. Yeah, I am going to give that a try. I love my dairy.
I know. And it works on your opioid receptors. It does. It's literally like the full-on reward system gets triggered when we eat cheese, because I always have that discussion, and clients are always like, don't take my cheese away. I love my cheese. I can give up anything. I can't give up cheese. And it's exactly that. It reacts on your brain on receptors that are so rewarding that it gives you that feeling, right? And then people are like, I don't want to miss that. I totally get it.
So what do you recommend that people do in that period where you're kind of weaning off to get, like, is it just, you just willpower your way through, or do you find like other...
Well, we find things, I really want people to do things that bring them joy. Right. I think it's important, like do something every day that brings you joy and gives you a reward, so to say, like gives you that feeling of like that dopamine and all those fun chemicals, right? So yeah, definitely shift that. But with like, I'm pretty strict with the dairy. And I like to take it out for a while. And I'm not saying you can't take it back in, but if we're really trying to get to the root of everything here, we need to, like the way I work with my sleep clients, I need to eliminate everything that might have an effect on cortisol to get them to sleep while the body heals. And so that's where I'm pretty strict with that. If you're doing that at home, you don't have to be that strict. But I think if you do it and you start seeing that you're feeling better, that alone is motivation to keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell us a little bit more about the alcohol. I mean, I keep saying to my clients in the Reshape method that alcohol is the peri and menopausal woman's kryptonite for so many reasons. And now we have another one to add.
Yeah, well, alcohol is a toxin to the body. Like the body sees it as a toxin. So it will not only change your gut bacteria, which we talked about isn't necessarily the greatest because it doesn't change it in a favorable way. It has a ton of sugar. It is fermented. If you drink wine, you have it fermented. If you drink beer, you have yeast. If we're somebody who consumes sugar and alcohol, that's something else I often see in clients: candida overgrowth.
Sugar and alcohol and
it's a yeast feast, right? They just live with that. these fungi, and they all just love it. And then we have candida overgrowth, which again is an inflammatory reaction, which again messes with our gut and our sleep. And alcohol has lots of other, when it comes to sleep. So like I said, it's a toxin. So the liver will say, okay, alcohol goes first in line. This is the most harmful substance that I've been ingesting all day. So this needs to get cleared first. All the other things that we have ingested, like pesticides, herbicides, cosmetic, we don't ingest cosmetic, but we put stuff on our skin and that gets absorbed in the bloodstream, blah, blah. All that needs to be dealt with by the liver. But alcohol is first in line, and that takes a little, that's a big job. And all these things line up. And the body is not going to get to all these things because alcohol takes up so much capacity. If we do that right one night, probably won't make a difference. But if you do that over time, the liver just can't keep up. And then these toxins will recirculate in the body. And that can cause inflammation in itself. It's a super stress to the body. And liver congestion is one of the other reasons that people wake up at 3 a.m. on a regular basis. And alcohol also really messes with your sleep. Women are always like, I need my glass of wine at night to get into to wind down and get sleepy. And it does help with falling asleep in women, but you don't get a good sleep. It messes with your deep sleep, your restorative sleep, and it also messes with your REM sleep. So those sleep phases where we regulate our emotions and consolidate memory later in the night. So alcohol, I would say in general, it's up to anybody to make that decision, but I agree with you, perimenopause and menopausal women, it's not our friend.
Yeah. Let us know in the comments. I'm going to check the comments now. I'm going to, Annika, if you can just wrap it up for us. I'm going to check the comments for any questions, any last words of advice that you have for people. It will give them a couple of minutes to just pop their questions in the chat, and then maybe we can take a few questions.
Absolutely. Yeah, so if we wrap up gut health, I would say for things to really do at home is this: slow down when you eat, get into a calm state. Don't consume too much liquid with your food, at the meal, because it dilutes your stomach acid even more. And one thing that is really important for the gut to reheal and is melatonin. And for that, we need to have this difference of light and dark. We want the cortisol with the bright light during the day, and we want melatonin at night, and melatonin requires dark. So really make sure you're not on too many screens after sunset. TV is better than phones and computers because it's a little further away. Dim your lights at home. Make sure that your bedroom is dark and that you don't have the phone next to your bed where notifications pop up in the middle of the night and it has this blue light all the time. Even if you're sleeping, your body through light sensors on the skin and everywhere still recognizes that. So really make sure that your bedroom is as dark as possible and that you avoid too much bright light after the sun's gone down. Those would be
fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, so we have a question here. First of all, one lady in the Facebook group says, I've tried melatonin, magnesium, sleep apps, none of that is working. All right. And then we have another question here. Can parasites affect the ability to get to sleep in the first place?
Well, let's take the parasite question first. Technically, yes, because oftentimes when we have parasites, we have other things also because our systems are already weakened. So them directly, maybe not, unless it was a crazy amount and it would be constantly stressing your system. I would say this is more a night thing, but they can cause anxiety too. So if that is something, it could be linked to a parasite. So technically, yes. The other one I've tried, melatonin, magnesium, weighted blankets, everything. Yeah, that might be a good thing to start looking deeper. If that's something, what is going on? What's going on with your nutrition? Are you eating the right things at the right time? How healthy is your gut? What's going on with your hormones? Are you absorbing nutrients correctly? Can you make all those neurotransmitters and calming things? Do you have enough calcium and magnesium? They're both calming minerals. Do you have enough potassium to actually get them into the cells? Like, there's a whole orchestra of things that could be happening. Or is there something that's often overlooked too? Is there anything that happened with you related to sleep, like, or at night? And I'm talking about things like they could be traumas. I've worked with women who haven't slept in like 30, 40 years properly. And some of the reasons, yes, their system is pretty broken down from all the stress. And we heal that system from a physiological perspective. But from a psychological perspective, there were things that happened when they were children that are just kind of still sending an alert signal to their brain. Even though these situations are long gone, their body's still primed that they might need to be awake at night.
Right.
And those could be simple. Those are things they don't have to have happened in your childhood. They can happen when you're grown up. A lot of moms have that once the baby starts sleeping through, that they can't sleep because they're still on this alert, or the baby's going to wake up. And we can retrain ourselves to do that. That might be things, you have a loved one in the hospital and you're just waiting every night for this phone call to, oh, there's an emergency or something happens. If these things stress us too much, it can be that the body kind of programs. So think about it for yourself a little, what kind of situations might be applying to you if you've tried all these things. If you think it's more of a physical thing, then I would start looking into that. If it's something where you think it might be more of there could be things that might be anxiety related or trauma related or something. Things that I love and I often refer clients to is tapping, emotional freedom technique, to work on trauma and release trauma. Sometimes hypnotherapy, sometimes a combination of both. There's lots of great somatic experiences that people can explore to let go of these things and let their body, because all the body needs is feel safe to be able to fall asleep.
Absolutely. And in the reshape method, I show my members how to do a psoas release. We do two specific release moves because the psoas is our fight or flight muscle. And so many women tell me that they cannot go to sleep at night until they've done their psoas release. So I want to show you that. It's a little magic. You can show that to your clients. And one last question we have is there a holistic treatment to get rid of parasites that you would recommend, or do you need a physician to help diagnose first, then treat?
There's both. So you could go the physician route and have them treat it, or there is lots of holistic people who treat parasites. I personally would stay away from simple parasite cleanses that you buy on the internet for $30. I think some of them work. The reason is what I said in the beginning, some of those ingredients can do so much harm to your gut. And you need to rebuild it after, and you need to have somebody who knows how to do that. So it could be, like I said, it could be a naturopath, it could be like a functional diagnostic person. Some holistic nutritionists can do that. You can definitely go a holistic route and stay away from antiparasitic drugs if that's something that you don't want.
Thank you. And then we have a comment on LinkedIn where Hillary says, for the last 2 years, if I have dairy, sugar, more than 4 ounces of beer or prosecco after 6 p.m., I am not sleeping well, right? And she says, I think it's my cortisol. So that goes back to exactly what you were saying.
Yes.
We have to kind of find our joy elsewhere, I suppose. But it just is what it is. So let us know, Annika, how can people get hold of you? Do you work internationally? I know you are in Canada.
I do work internationally. Most of my clients are actually in the US and Europe and in Canada, but I work with, I think, basically every country. I can work with basically every country. I'm on social media. I'm on LinkedIn. I am on YouTube. It's on YouTube, it's Sleep Like a Boss. It's a channel where I post my podcast because I have the Sleep Like a Boss podcast. And I'm on Instagram at _Annika Carroll. And the website is sleeplikeaboss.com, which we're just redoing. So you'll still find all the information there, but it's going to have a little reboot this year.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming to talk to us on this Wednesday Wonder Why Lunch and Learn. It is We Have Learned, and now I'm going to go lunch. I'm going to try not to include the cheese, although I don't know. Not quite ready for that yet. But thank you. This has been amazing, so insightful, so much incredible information, and really just delivered in a just such an easily understandable way, because I know that this information can get quite technical. So thank you so much for coming to chat with us. It's been amazing.
Thank you so much, Tracy, for having me.
All the